Welcome back to the Mom Slow Down podcast. I'm here with Mica Deshaw. She's a mom of two and founder behind Rested Mama, Happy Baby. She's a pediatric sleep coach and a childbirth and postpartum new parent educator focused on newborn sleep education. She provides one-on-one coaching to develop unique sleep plans and routines that maximize sleep for families in just 2 weeks. Get out of here. That's awesome. She's driven by the pure passion to help other families get the sleep and balance they need to give them the energy to enjoy the moments of parenthood. And we all know that sleep, adults need 8 to 10 hours, and we know exactly what happens when we don't get enough sleep. So Mica's here. We're going to debunk those sleep myths. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's so funny. I think like when you're pregnant or when you have a new baby, it just opens you up for people to like invade your personal space. You know, people are like on the bus or, you know, on an airplane and they're touching your stomach. Oh, you know, everybody's just in your zone. Why do you think that part of life just opens people up to like give their unsolicited advice to warrant, you know, all of this chatter?
You know, it's one of those things where something like being a parent, especially after a certain time and the baby boomer age, is everyone's gone through it. And so they have a lot to say about it. But the problem is there's not a lot of education around it. So it's easy to snowball in those conversations, especially about sleep, where you can go to all the hospital classes, right? You can go to them twice. And I actually just did a reel with my little girl about what it's really like to take a hospital class and then come home with a newborn. You walk away from those classes learning how to swaddle and that you're supposed to shush them and diaper and feed. And you're like, all right, I get it. I got it. And then there's this underlying thought that people always tell you you're not going to get sleep and all these other things, but nobody actually gives you the guidance. But you don't question it because it's years of people having gone through it and just driving off intuition. And then you go home and then 30 days later, you go to the pediatrician and they're like, oh yeah, so that's the first thing they ask you. How's it going? How's the sleep? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm not sleeping well. And you'll either get, oh, don't worry. It'll come, just power through it. You know, you hear that enough and it starts to turn into a message like, well, you became a parent, so you should be okay with not having that. That was your decision to make.
Well, a lot of guilt and shame is around it, yeah. Right? You know, because I think you walk out and they give you this little person and you're like, what the hell? I wasn't qualified for this. You know, I didn't get any training. There's no manual rule book. And you end up feeling guilty and shameful most of the time that you're screwing something up and nobody's around giving you the pat on the backs, but they're certainly around to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's hard because once you get to the pediatrician office, then they do ask you, oh, are they getting at least 15 hours of sleep? And you're like, where in the time that I was pregnant to the time I got to this position was someone supposed to tell me that? You know, they don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it. There's also no support for moms postpartum, right? And they're like, oh, that's just mom brain. I'm like, no, wait a minute. Have you had any of your hormones checked, your thyroid? You know, sometimes not being able to access words like saucer or doorway or window is not just because you're sleep deprived. You know, and we all,
totally.
You know, Eckhart Tolle, who I'm in this class with, is talking about like going back to the source, like universal consciousness is sleep. When we're in our deep sleep, it's like this beautiful little death every day. And if you don't sleep, you go insane. And so, I mean, poor moms that have no support and no education. So what do you do in providing education to obviously outside of the hospital setting?
Yeah, so I try to go for a holistic approach. So the first thing I do is, you know, I make sure they realize I do this because this is my passion. I'm not driven by the next family or the next client. I'm in it to support what you want as a mom. So the other stigma I like to make sure I attack is if you don't have a problem with your sleep, but you're also hearing from other people that you have to have a schedule or you have to have independently sleeping baby. If you don't have a problem with that, I don't need you to talk to me and feel like you have to do anything and change anything. This is really a decision you have to make because you think it's right. So I'm not here to advocate what a mom should or should not do. Do what's best for your family. And so I start with that, having a conversation with, what are you trying to accomplish? And is what you're doing now getting there, or is there something I can help you with? So one is education for new and expecting parents, just around understanding what can you expect from a newborn.
What can you expect from a newborn?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it has to be from all over, right? Everything from, oh my God, they came home and they slept 8 hours. I don't know how I got so lucky to, they only sleep during the day and they're awake all night and everything in between.
And what's the difference? And what are your realistic expectations? And, what can sleep deprivation feel like? Because you don't know until you're in it. And that was something that I always said I was not prepared for. Everyone told me I wasn't going to sleep with my first child 5 years ago. But what that actually turned out to look like, nobody told me that. You hear funny stories, but not the real stuff. So I go through all of that, what to expect from a newborn, what are your sleep goals, how much should they be getting, what are some signs of overtiredness and undertiredness, so you're not getting, the bad advice maybe from a nanny or a grandma that says, oh, well, they're just not tired because look, their eyes are open and they're so active and they've been up for 4 hours. Well, if you know that a newborn doesn't usually function very well after 35 minutes, you'd realize that is like way past maybe what they were able to manage through. And then, some tips. How can you start healthy habits for sleep in the beginning to even creating what is a postpartum sleep plan? So when you have a doula, you create a postpartum plan. And that's around like feeding yourself maybe, or getting some laundry done. And then you have your childbirth plan. But one thing that couples don't really talk about is, what does a nighttime look like? And who does it always usually end up falling on as default? Well, mom. That might be something that shouldn't be a default, right? You should have a conversation of what nights look like. And you should take turns because, moms need to have that balance and a little bit of sleep. What does morning look like from a perspective so that mom can actually get sleep? So I focus on that from an education standpoint. And then the families that want to work with me one-on-one, I help them create that plan and also create a specific sleep schedule, routine, and education throughout their journey, and try to get them sleep really within 2 weeks is my goal. So when you work with me, it's like a 2-week boot camp. Let's do this. Let's get you sleep. And it's all about education. And then the third is I have a do-it-yourself library. So I have a Rested Mama library for those moms who just really want to dive in and create something on their own. But there's so much online. It could get you in a tizzy about what's right, what's wrong, get you to question what you think is right. And I have a library that is educationally based and has evidence and step-by-step so you can create one on your own. So that's really what I provide to families.
I love something that you said, and it reminds me of being in an interfaith marriage, right? If you're not having the conversations ahead of time, for me being in an interfaith marriage, it was like, okay, we had conversations ahead of time, and I was in some really wonderful groups of other women in interfaith marriages. Without having the conversations ahead of time, you don't really know what you're up against. And I love what you said about, let's talk about the responsibilities as it involves sleep. Let's talk about what night looks like versus morning. How are we best able to share these roles? Who does it fall upon in normal situations or in crisis? And just to begin to have that dialogue, which I don't think people are even on the radar. I mean, you have the dialogue about what you're going to do with your other kids or finances, religion. I mean, you're having sex. We're not actually talking enough about sex, and that is a whole nother podcast, but definitely the sleep and the responsibilities. For you, how did you find yourself in this career path? Did you have a mentor that helped you, or did you learn it the hard way? What was?
I had both.
Yeah. Okay.
So 5 years ago, I had my daughter, and I have a 5-month-old now. So I know I've been able to kind of see how I wanted to do things.
And are you rested currently?
I am rested.
Okay.
I am. I could not possibly call myself a sleep coach if my child wasn't sleeping 12 hours in the night.
Yes.
So 5 years ago, I consider myself a type A kind of person. I climbed up the corporate ladder. I thought that's, I waited to have a child because I knew it was going to be hard work. Had my daughter, took all the hospital classes, and then it was probably about 12 weeks in of everyone telling me, oh, it's just how it is. And thinking like, but I'm not functioning. So does that make me a bad mom? Because clearly other people must be having this issue, but I'm literally going out of my mind. I'm walking out the door with my clothes inside out. I definitely have put the refrigerator or the keys in the refrigerator quite a few times. And we even had moments where, we had to wake her up every 2 hours. And I would tell my husband that he needed to go grab the baby. And he started digging through the bed looking for her. Like, oh my gosh, where's the baby, hon? And I'm watching him going, she's still in the pack and play.
Yeah.
Right. And he goes over, and I still remember that night that we were so tired. He then looked at me and he goes, okay, but are we starting or did we just finish? Like he had no idea what concept of time we were
Some
at.
clear signs of sleep deprivation, right?
Totally. And then, he and I were spending, admittedly hours on the yoga ball trying to get her to fall asleep, and just, I couldn't do it anymore, and he couldn't do it. And he's like, we need to do something. So I went on a huge journey on educating myself on everything related to sleep, everything related to sleep training, whether it was good, whether it was bad, what is the evidence, what are the methods, how do you figure all this out? And then I worked with 2 other sleep consultants, and then that actually became the catalyst of me going into this profession, because I just felt like if I had known this before I had my first child, and it was part of even all the books that I read, because I feel like every book from childbirth to having, a new child, that I would have just been better prepared. And that's what kind of got me to where I am right now is, I'm an advocate. I want you to know that as a mom and as a dad, there is a way for you to find balance, and you don't have to just swallow the exhaustion. And you had just mentioned it, right? Sleep deprivation is something that really impacts postpartum depression. And it's a form of torture. We use it as a form of torture. So how is that right?
If you can remember having sleepless nights, it is torture. It is terrible because the sun comes up and you're just trying to function and not well, and everything, everything from how you feed yourself is impacted when you don't get enough sleep. Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for you for for truly going through the trenches, seeing a complete void in education and plan and services for new mamas and newborns, and then taking the leap to really fill that void and help other women so they didn't have to go through what you went through, which is so true. And I think the big thing on this podcast too is like, let's have these conversations, because not everyone is bringing a baby home and they're like, have beautifully coiffed hair and makeup done. And the baby, of course, is sleeping, 8 hours, and, there's no throw up in sight, or, no poop up the back and all that, and that's not the reality. And the more that we can talk about it and not make excuses for things to be okay, because then everyone feels like they're the only one suffering. Because it looks like in the world that we live in social media and everything, that everything is perfect for everyone else except for you. And that is clearly not the case. But there is a better way, and that involves education and understanding. What are some tips that you have for new moms that may be listening to become rested, to stay rested?
Yeah. So the first thing I always tell a mom is, first, I always start with mindset. Don't feel bad about wanting sleep, because unless you get over that first tip or that first strategy, you're not going to get it, because you're going to feel guilty every time you try to sneak a snooze. So first, be okay with knowing that you deserve that. You just grew a human, first of all. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself. So, it's okay for you to want it. It's okay for you to want things different. The second thing that's a little bit more tactical is just knowing that, first of all, the first 8 weeks, you can't really spoil a baby. So don't let anyone tell you that you have to do things a certain way. Just survive the first 8 weeks. And then there are things that you can do to start implementing some healthy habits. So the first one is making sure that you always feed awake. It's really easy for baby to fall asleep at the bottle or at the breast. And while it is totally a beautiful thing, it can cause your baby to look for that every time they wake up from their sleep, which is, when they're younger, every hour to 2 hours. So I often get moms who tell me, oh, well, I had a really great sleeping baby who slept through the night. And then I get a phone call around the 6-month mark and the 8th-month mark. I don't know what happened. He or she is waking up every 2 hours. Why? He was sleeping through the night. Well, they go from a deep sleep to a light sleep. So if they're used to falling asleep on the bottle or falling asleep in your arms, it's like sleeping in your bed and then waking up on the sidewalk. You're going to be like, wait a second, where is the thing that I was so comfy with? So making sure that they know where they're falling asleep, right? And it's not a surprise to them, is going to really help you. And then having consistent cues is probably the second thing that I notice isn't prevalent in talking about bedtime routine and nap time routine. First of all, having a nap time routine, usually it's, oh yeah, we have a bedtime routine. It goes from this to this to this. And then I always ask, do you have a sleepy time phrase? Because it's also
Wait,
verbal.
what did you say? Did you have a sleep what?
Sleepy time phrase.
Okay. Sleepy time phrase.
It's verbal just as much as it's, action driven, that around the 8-week mark, babies start to develop the ability to see patterns and sequences. So the more you're able to provide expectation to your child of what is to come, the less jarred they're going to be when it's time for sleep. So, I'm not going to go to you, Jessica, and say, okay, we're going to talk right now. Now I'm going to close the door, sleep.
Right. And nobody likes that. That's the fight or flight response. Nobody wants to be startled and then their heart rate is elevated. I mean, it's the same thing, or if you had a door slammed or something right before you went to sleep. Yeah, I can
exactly. So those are really the biggest things. And, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that you should have your baby able to fall asleep awake. And those are all the things related to it. It's about expectation. It's about not startling them. And it's about when they do wake up, they can go back to sleep and they have a more consolidated rest. And that's not that anyone actually grows out of. We as adults wake up 2 to 5 times a night, but we have the ability to go back to sleep without needing something, or we're capable of getting what we need in order to do that. So those are really the biggest things. And there's ways for you to practice and making sure that, they're set up for the best success for sleep and that you also get the sleep that you need.
Well, and I think just giving that permission to, which has been a consistent theme on so many episodes, of wanting something for yourself as a woman, that we don't have to be martyrs. Like, for you to say, it's okay to want sleep. Like, it seems so rudimentary, but it's so powerful to give others permission. Like, it's okay to want time for yourself. If you have a newborn, it's okay to want to have, restful sleep. I mean, these are just like bare bones minimum, and taking that whole idea that we have to give up of ourselves everything and be stripped of everything and left with nothing to be a good mother. And that's simply just not the case. So what do you think? Let's say we kind of screwed the pooch and now we have a 5-year-old that comes in. Oh God, I used to double lock her door. We had to put a padlock on the outside, and she would figure out how to get out of bed. And she would just be standing in the hallway at like 11 p.m., like a little psycho. We're like, oh shit. I'd walk out and she would be like standing right there, totally silent. She didn't have like a weapon in her hand or anything. I'm like, go back to bed. What do you do if we've made it this far and we still haven't instilled healthy sleep habits? Do you get those clients?
I do. And I have a toddler as well who I'm working with, very similar. And then another family, also toddler, and poor mom and dad actually have a mattress in his room, still sleeping in there halfway through the night. So that's a lot of years with broken sleep.
That's going to take a minute to wean them off of those habits, I imagine.
It is. And it still goes back to expectations. I mean, setting expectations for babies obviously it doesn't take as much, right? Maybe 20, 15 minutes. But when you get to children that are a little bit older, it's about deep communication and expectation setting. So you're almost training them before. It's consistency. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So it's about, it's the same for every job. It's saying what you mean, doing what you say, and sticking to what you're saying. So you're
even when it's hard
to them about it, even when it's hard, because guess what toddlers and kids do?
Push the boundaries.
They push the boundaries because they're trying to figure out where is the consistency. So is it that it applies to X, Y, Z, but does that mean that for one, it doesn't apply? And they're trying to learn too. So the more that you can stick to them, even if they don't like the answer, that's going to be the key. So communicating to them, I'm telling you that these are the rules. And then I love to suggest that parents actually role play. So if you're in that situation, you say, okay, these are the rules. And if this happens, this is the consequence. If this happens, this is the reward. Okay, I'm going to be you be mommy. Okay, I'm going to try to get out of the room. What are you going to do? And getting them to understand that. And then another thing that I love is with kids, once you get to the point where you're actually implementing, like, this is the rule, it starts tonight, you get one warning. And then after that, we keep going. When there's a reward, it's got to be immediate. So if the goal is that you want them to stay in the room until the light goes off, have a treasure box, fill it with $1 toys. And the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning and they make it is they get to go to that treasure box. That instant gratification is really helpful.
Yeah, I think we ended up doing a chart with stickers, but what we needed was the instant gratification. And we had the double locks. And I think I eventually put her back into a crib.
Yes.
Because I was like, if you keep coming out all night, I can't
make it harder.
Yeah. You're going to have to really, get yourself out of this crib now. I mean, she was one where I think we put her into a big girl bed because we were moving really early. And then when we moved into our new house, it was fair game. And she just came out until all hours of the night, but she's now 9 and we're past that, thank goodness, for the most part. She still likes to wake up really early. So are you able to see clients kind of all over and do like Zoom? Where can people find more information about you? I'm sure there's new moms out there listening being like, okay, there is an answer, the best education. Where are your services?
Yeah, so I have a lot of interaction on my Instagram, which is at rested_mama_happy_baby. I should probably shorten that a little bit.
And we'll put all the links in the show notes for sure.
I do provide a lot of tips on there and very engaged on my stories. I will answer questions as much as I can on stories, even live, if you send me a question. And I have links in my Instagram where you can schedule a free 15-minute consult. So I'm offering a free nursery assessment. So I'm also a Sleep Safe ambassador. So if you want to schedule a 15-minute consultation, I will do a consult over, what you should and should not have in your nursery, and then how to also make sure that it is sleep friendly. And you can use those tips for free. And then you can also look at my website, which is restedmamahappybaby.com, and see what I have as far as my coaching programs go and our resources and everything like that. But for those mamas who are supporting this awesome podcast, I am going to provide an exclusive discount to my premium package of 50% off. And this is kind of like my white glove support for families to get you sleep just within 2 weeks, where you have actually direct access to me by text at bedtime, which is really nice because you might not realize how many questions you have once we start implementing the plan of their standing, what do I do? Or, bedtime is at this time, but the nap ended late, and I walk you through all of that and provide the support. So
I love a good white glove service. Mica, you're opening yourself up. That's pretty awesome, listeners. That's fantastic. And is there a time frame that people should meet with you? Is it like, hey, I'm pregnant and I'm finding a doula and they start, or is it, I'm home, I realize that it's not working, I'm exhausted? I mean, at what point do they want to search you out?
I would say either time. I love to work with expecting parents or newborn parents to get them to set up healthy sleep habits, because at that point it's practicing and you're laying the foundation. I also mostly work with parents who may have gotten to the point where, oh no, I'm not getting sleep and my good sleeper is no longer a good sleeper, and we come up with a different plan for that. But I love the education and being able to provide parents with that before they get to that point.
I love it.